name is Kevon Owen. This is Holly Shockley from Thrive Christian Counseling, and we're talking about boundaries because it keeps coming up. People come see us, they're frustrated, they're resentful. Well, it's because they didn't set up boundaries or their boundaries aren't being respected. Holly, how do we help them?
Yeah, I think first is even understanding and allowing freedom that we can set boundaries. That's actually a really healthy thing for all of us to do as humans. The order of the world works with boundaries. And so understanding that boundaries aren't mean, you don't have to be hateful about them. They are actually in the best interest of us as individuals to know what our boundaries are, our mental boundaries, our relational boundaries, our physical boundaries, and then be able to articulate those boundaries to other people in a way that is loving, because they're for me. The boundaries are what keep me in control and in check and healthy and well, whether they agree with them or not. So.
Yeah, there's a matter of respect in boundaries. If you want to test the parameters of your relationship, not that I'm saying you should be running tests on the boundaries of your relationships, but there's a lot to be shown in the relationship that's there if they'll accept your boundaries. If they don't care what your boundaries are, that's roughly the same thing as not caring about what you do and don't need, which isn't a relationship. A relationship should be two people coming together, or three people, or your family, or however it is, but respecting the needs and the comforts and the approach of all the people. That's got wordy.
So Kevin, are you saying that I don't actually have to agree with the boundary to be able to respectfully allow you to have your own boundaries?
No, I'm not saying that, because if you don't agree with them, then you obviously hate them. That's a joke. Yes, you can obviously not agree with someone's boundaries and respect the person. Really, when we don't observe people's boundaries, we're pushing them away, because at a certain point we go into this self-preservationally side of things where we're just going to do what we have to do to get through it. And more times than not, whenever you learn that talking doesn't work, you stop talking.
Yeah, I heard a quote one time, and if I can recognize that somebody else's behaviors, what they need, what they don't need, has way more to do with them than it does me, then I can actually extend grace.
Yeah.
So, boundaries.
People resent boundaries if they didn't have boundaries, and now you're trying to give boundaries. There goes a motorcycle. If you're trying to give boundaries where there wasn't boundaries, they may push back, they may resent it, they may resent you. But really, remember what you're doing when you're setting boundaries. You're setting parameters so that your relationship can grow stronger and closer. And so even though the process is there, Holly said something that it was fantastic, several things, but one thing that stood out to me is they're not mean. It's not mean to say I can't do something or I won't do something. It's not mean to disagree. It's not mean to draw a line of what's right for you. It would be mean not to, because of where it goes when you don't.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I also have heard that not having boundaries creates chaos, but having boundaries actually allows us freedom to be who we are in the moment. And so, sometimes clients come and they don't know what that means, what boundaries are. And boundaries can be physical, they can be mental boundaries, time-bound boundaries, relational boundaries. And I sometimes interchangeably use them as like, what are the structures that keep you well? What are the rhythms? Because those in and of themselves are our boundaries.
There was a book called Boundaries once, a long time ago. I believe it's by, is it Townsend? Maybe?
Cloud and Townsend.
Townsend, and that other person too. And one thing that you might see is people who read that book wrong read it into that they're supposed to get rid of all of the hard relationships in their lives. That is not what that book is saying. That is not the takeaway. Really, whenever you're in a relationship and you find it being more of a tax than a benefit, or you're just cringing at the thought of being around them, that's actually a great time for you to look at what your boundaries are or what they should be so that you can continue in the relationship.
Yeah, and when I'm talking about boundaries with clients, we talk about them not as like these fortresses that we put up, but like permeable boundaries that you can decide what ebbs and flows out of them, and use words to articulate that too.
If you need help setting boundaries, as it's something that seems to be going around, I think culturally we have a culture that resists boundaries and setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps to have a counselor, and that's what Holly does. That's also what I do. We'd love to help.